Good morning. Do carry on your conversations later over coffee at the end of the service. There's no need to rush away if you don't have to, so plenty of time to get to know one another further. I don't know about you, but I've had one of those weeks. I think Claire mentioned earlier that she'd had one of those weeks where you just completely running from one thing to the next. At one point in the week, I literally did not know what to do with myself. I had to be in two places at the same time, across the city. Obviously impossible. I had to make a decision. But it's been one of those weeks. But let's just spend a moment this morning coming back to God and thinking about, we're in this series of Back to Basics, and ironically, this week is about solitude. And because I've had one of those weeks where I've just been running around from one thing to the next, I really could have done with those moments of solitude, and yet I didn't. So hopefully this morning will help me and will help you to think about solitude and how we might create that in our lives. So if we flick the slide, our reading, I'm going to go through the Bible, lots of verses this morning, just looking at how solitude is throughout Scripture. But I wanted to start off with this verse from Mark. This is the point where the disciples had been sent off to go on mission, to go and share the good news of Jesus, and they'd come back to Jesus to, to debrief and to see how it had all gone. And this is what Jesus says to them. The apostles gathered around Jesus and reported to him all they'd done and taught. Then, because so many people were coming and going that they did not even have chance to eat, he said to them, "Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest." So they went away by themselves in a boat to a solitary place. Jesus also says in Matthew this, "Come to me, all you who are weary and carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls." In solitude, it's something perhaps a lot of us run away from. But in solitude, we have this invitation from Jesus to come away with him, an invitation from the King of Kings. Today in the Church of England, in fact, I think probably in all Anglican churches, in the lectionary, it's known as Christ the King Sunday. The moment it's like the pinnacle moment in the lectionary where everything comes together when we celebrate that Christ is King. And so today, Christ is offering us this invitation. Christ, who is the King of all things in the whole universe, he's offering us an invitation to come away with him and spend time with him. I don't know about you, but that's an invitation I don't want to miss. I don't want to miss the opportunity to spend time with him. I want to do a myth buster. Solitude isn't just about silence. I hear lots of people say to me, "Oh, but I can't do silence. I don't like the voices in my head," or I'm an extrovert, or I need to be around people. You know, I get that. It's not just about silence. Solitude is a retreat from the everyday distractions of life. Silence, however, is a tool that can facilitate that to happen. But the purpose of solitude is to hear God more clearly, to know that he's with you, to commune with him, to have chance where the deep, deep depths of your soul can come into his presence and be healed. Exodus 33:14 says this, "My presence will go with you and I will give you rest." Rest is something that we don't do very well in our culture. But solitude is a form of worship. It's a form of devotion to Jesus. It's an invitation to life-changing encounters with him. Jesus' habit was to regularly go away with God and spend time with him. If you read through the Gospels, Jesus is always going up the mountain or going off to a solitary place or getting into a boat to have time on his own. There's three things I want to pick up, what solitude can do for us. So solitude, we're going to look this morning that solitude brings us clarity in our walk with Jesus. We hear God's voice more clearly, and we know what his will is for our lives. Solitude is a place where we can recharge our batteries and become more like the person God wanted us to be. And solitude is a place of encounter or re-encounter and reconnection with God the Father. And so the invitation is to come away with Jesus. Come away by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest. So solitude as clarity. Jesus spent 40 days in the wilderness before he started his earthly ministry. He'd already been on earth for 30 years at this point, doing his thing. But this was a moment a transitional moment, where Jesus went from just being Jesus, the carpenter's son, and transformed into Jesus the Messiah. He was, of course, the Messiah before that. Don't get me wrong. So Jesus spending 40 days in the wilderness allowed him time to contemplate what was coming. He knew that the next 3 years were going to be a challenge. He knew, I believe, he knew what the ending of those 3 years would be. And yet, in those 40 days, he was also challenged by the devil in different ways to see if he was weak enough to be broken. And of course, he wasn't. But in that solitude, in that desert time, God enabled him to become the Jesus that he needed him to be. Solitude enables us, creates in us more of a compassionate heart. It creates in us a more empathetic sense to be Jesus to the world around us. In solitude, we gain strength and wisdom for the journey ahead. We become more Christ-like as we spend more time with him. Solitude is a little bit like the oaks. So one of the trees in this country that has the deepest roots that go really deep is the oak tree. And solitude is just like us. We're the oak, but we need to go deep. And in solitude, our roots can go deep, 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 deep down. And that will enable us to continue and be Jesus to one another for longer. Solitude is a place of clarity. Jesus, at the end of his ministry, in the Garden of Gethsemane, he knew what was coming. He knew the cross was just around the corner. And yet he prayed this prayer, Father, if you're willing, remove this cup from me, yet not my will, but yours be done. A prayer of anguish, prayer from the heart. Solitude allows us time where we can be honest in a raw way with Jesus. It creates space in our lives, in our hearts, in our minds, where we can actually just pour it all out to God. In our everyday, we might not be able to go deep in our own emotions, our own souls, deep enough to be raw with Jesus. We don't know what's going to come out in those moments where we are raw. But in solitude, we have that time and space where Jesus is invited in and the healing of God comes upon us. So what do we need to do to disconnect from our lives, our everyday lives, to allow God to speak to you on such a deep level? Some of the easy things that we can do are just things like turning off the television, turning off our earpods, just switching off from the noise around us. Our world is so noisy, so many voices pulling us in different directions. We need to take time to listen to Jesus, to what he's actually saying, the clarity. Quite a few years ago now, I'd like to think it was only a couple of years ago, but it was 12 years ago, I felt this call to spend some time in Uganda. A friend of mine runs a charity out there, and there was this plan. Sophie and I were going to go together to Uganda, and then about 5 months just before we booked our flights, actually, she calls me up and says, "Claire, I've met someone." And I was like, okay, great, well done. It meant that the plan that we were going to go together wasn't going to happen. Her and Charlie are an amazing couple, got married a few months after they met, and still running this charity together. However, it meant that I had this moment of like, God, what are you doing? The plan was for us to go together. Do I go on my own? What do I do? And I remember, at the time I lived in Perranporth, and I remember walking the beach 3 miles each way, going, God, I need to hear from you. This calling is quite a big one, but I need to hear. I need clarity on the situation. And I remember really clearly hearing God's voice, whether it was audible or whether it was in my heart, mind, I couldn't tell you. But I remember this voice saying to me, "This is my way, come walk in it." An invitation to come walk in the way that God had prepared. And long story short, I went to Uganda, and God moved in some amazing ways. But that's for another day to tell you about that. So Jesus invites us to come and come walk in this moment with him of solitude, whether that's on the beach or somewhere else. Solitude as recharge. So solitude is a place where we can recharge our batteries, regroup after a season of busyness, after maybe a day or a week or a year, whatever it might be, of just being run ragged. Solitude allows us that space to regroup in ourselves and regroup with our Creator. It's a place of permission giving to stop. We don't often give ourselves permission to stop in this world. In 1 Kings 19, we hear about Elijah, who had been really ridiculously busy, battling the prophets of Baal and all loads of other people. And it says this: while he himself Elijah went a day's journey into the wilderness, he came to a broom tree and sat down under it and prayed that he might die. I've had enough, Lord, he said. Take my life. I'm no better than my ancestors. Then he laid down under the bush and fell asleep. All at once, an angel touched him and said, "Get up and eat." He looked around, and there by his head was some bread baked over hot coals and a jar of water. He ate and drank and laid down again. The angel of the Lord came back a second time and touched him and said, "Get up and eat, for the journey is too much for you." So he got up and ate and drank. Strengthened by that food, he traveled 40 days and 40 nights until he reached Horeb. Here we have Elijah at the end of himself. He literally had nothing else to give. He'd given all that he could, and he'd burnt out. It's a picture of burnout. I looked up yesterday that the statistic, and this is quite a shocking statistic, if I'm honest, is that 46% of the UK's workforce is close to burnout, has burnt out, or is close to burnout. That's basically one section of this church, one half of this church. So I know I'm talking to people who are either close to burnout or have burnt out, who can really relate with Elijah in this picture. Solitude is that invitation to come and recharge, to come and receive from God that rest that is so needed in our culture. After COVID, after that crazy year that we had, I went on retreat for 5 days, and as I used to do, I used to take like a stack of books thinking, I'll retreat and I'll read these books and, I'll find God in the pages. I actually went on this retreat with this stack of books, but I didn't open any of them. I slept, I ate, I walked. I slept, I ate, I walked. And it wasn't until about day 3 when I realized, my goodness, how tired am I? We need to allow ourselves to just rest and to stop and allow God to come and provide for us whatever it is that we need in those moments. For Elijah, it was just time, it was sleep, just like me after COVID. To eat, sleep, rest, eat, sleep, rest. Sometimes we do get to that point where that's what's needed. Solitude allows God to love us and to care for us as his child. We're all children of God, and God so longs to care for us and to love us in this way. Richard Rohr says this: solitude is a courageous encounter with our naked, most raw and real self in the presence of pure love. It's an invitation to be ourselves with God in a true and real way, to be honest with him, to be still and to know that he is God, that he is our refuge. Solitude is self-care in many aspects, but it's also a place of healing, a place where God can come and touch us in our deepest needs. And so thirdly, solitude as a place of connection or reconnection. Moses goes up the mountain to connect with God. He traveled through the wilderness with the Israelites, who were all saying, what's next, what's next, what's next? And so he goes up the mountain to receive the law, the 10 Commandments from God. It's a place of instruction. It's a place where we can reconnect with God and hear what's next, just like I heard on that beach. This is my way, come walk in it. Reconnection is life-changing. And so the invitation to solitude is life-changing, can be life-changing. Not necessarily in a big, dramatic sense, but in an everyday, small sense. What's next, Lord? Where do I go? What do you want me to do now, Lord? Solitude is a place of reconnection where we can bring our raw selves, like I've already said, to Jesus. After Jesus heard that his cousin John the Baptist had been beheaded and killed, he spent time alone with God. He brought his most innermost feelings and emotions and laid them bare in front of God. The same in the Garden of Gethsemane. Jesus laid down his deep spiritual connection with God and allowed God to guide him and to give him strength. And Elijah also, in that place of deep depression, God said this to him: "Go out and stand on the mountain in the presence of the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by." Then a great and powerful wind tore through the mountains apart, tore through the mountains apart, and shattered the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind, there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake came a fire, and after the fire came a gentle whisper. When Elijah heard it, he pulled his cloak over his face and went outside and stood at the mouth of the cave. Then a voice said to him, "What are you doing here?" We meet God in that quiet whisper. We obviously can meet God in other ways, but sometimes the quiet whisper, that gentle whisper of a lover that comes and stands really close to us and just whispers those things that we long to hear. In solitude, we get to hear that quiet whisper from God. Solitude is a place of peace. And so when was the last time you created moments of solitude in your life? It is one of those Christian basics that I think gets overlooked for whatever reason, whatever excuse we might think. But actually, it's quite simple to create in our lives, in our everyday. Sometimes every day I try and take a moment of solitude. It could literally be 3-4 minutes of maybe sitting on a step or sitting on a park bench, or it could even be as I'm waiting for the kettle to boil, and I just stop and try and allow myself to come into the presence of God in those moments. Once a week, I try and take the dog for a walk on my own and just give that time to God, much like a quiet time, but allowing God just to heal me, to reconnect with me, to spend time with me. I don't go with a great agenda. I just go with this invitation, come and spend time with me. And once a term, I try and do something a bit more slightly longer, I suppose, maybe half a day or a day, if my diary allows. And I go to somewhere like Buckfast Abbey. If you've ever been to Buckfast Abbey, right at the front of the Abbey, there's a prayer chapel with this amazing stained glass of a face of Jesus. And I often go there and just sit in silence, and I give God whatever it is that I'm holding at that moment, and I allow him to bring me rest, to connect with me in a deep sense, not in a kind of artificial or kind of covering over. I'm just raw with him. I bear everything to him, and I just allow him to meet my deepest need. And then once a year, and I know this, I know I'm privileged by being able to do this, but I try and take, at the end of the academic year, I'm one of the chaplains at Marjon, and the end of the academic year, after the craziness of all that's happened, I try and take 5 days in June, every June, and I go away to a place. Sometimes I go to Lee Abbey, sometimes I go to somewhere different, just to give that time to God and to rest and to eat and to be. Rest and eat and be. And I might read a bit of a book, but I often just walk and allow God to wash over me and to recreate me anew. So I want to encourage you to prioritize some type of time to have time with Jesus. That could simply be in your diary just to write, I'm meeting JC at 3:00. Okay, people don't need to know who JC is. You obviously know who he is. Just put in those moments of capture, create the space in your everyday, in your week, in your month, in your year. Try and create something. And the ways you might do that, and we mentioned right at the beginning about people who who need to be around people, the extroverts, the ones that don't like the silence. And it's not just about finding silence. It's about finding moments where you can be with Jesus. And so just practically, a few ways you can do that. In the small things, take a moment even before you get out of bed to connect with God, to connect with him, and to for you to give God your day and allow him to speak through those moments. Maybe have a cup of tea on a park bench, or as you're sitting on the bus on the way to work or to university. Just unplug yourself from the world and connect with God. It's an intentional thing, solitude. It's not going to happen unintentionally. Maybe if you've got a dog, just like me, you can go walk the dog and just spend moments with him in the park. Or perhaps late at night, just before you head off to bed, go outside and look up. If it's a clear night, look up at the stars and just allow God to speak about the amazingness of this world. Allow yourself to connect with the God that holds this universe in the palm of his hand. John Wesley, his mum, her name was Susanna. She had 11 children. And the way Susanna used to connect with God, can you imagine 11 children running around? And two of them changed the course of the church in this country in the 1700s. And the way Susanna used to connect with God and have those moments of solitude is that she would get her apron and lift her apron over her head. And at that point, the children knew that Mum was having time with God, not to disturb unless something dire had happened. And so what I'm trying to say is that these moments of solitude, everybody can find a different way of doing that. It might be that you go to a museum. If you're someone who needs to be around people, go down to the box, go down to an art gallery. And although you're with people, you can have those moments with Jesus as he talks to you through the images that you see. Maybe a quiet corner of a coffee shop is your thing. Maybe running or cycling or swimming or surfing. But go intentionally to meet God. And I really encourage you to think about those longer places where you might be able to retreat to. For me, retreat time is so important. It could be that park bench in the local park, or it could be a bench up on the Hoe. It could be walking the coastal path for a day. Or if possible, it could be going to a retreat place, or maybe going away on your own in a tent or in a caravan just for a day or two, intentionally to reach out to be with Jesus. Saint Teresa of Avila said this: "Settle yourself in solitude, and you will come upon him in yourself." Jesus is so close to us. He's right there with us. He wants to commune with us. He wants to bring us wholeness and healing. He wants to direct us and connect with us, to recharge us and to give us clarity in our walk with him. The invitation is there, friends. Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest. And so I just want you to spend a moment thinking, what am I going to do this week, this year? How am I going to connect with God in solitude? How can I do that in my everyday? just spend a moment thinking about how you might connect with this Christian basic, but ultimately connecting and responding to the invitation that Jesus offers us to come away with him to a quiet place and get some rest.